My first thought is that Narendra Modi has suddenly been asked to enact a role which he's never done before in his life ever. Suddenly, he is faced in a situation where his arms may be twisted by his allies who would want certain policies, certain decisions, certain placements to be in line with their priorities to ensure that their voter base does not get upset. He will have to actually hold many more cabinet meetings and not just hold them, but he will have to actually listen to the views of the ministers, from the other parties, from his allies, and they will be having a viewpoint, and he will no longer be able to dictate terms to the minister to just endorse the decisions which have been made by the Prime Minister's office and the officers there in consultation with Mr. Modi. Will he be able to present a new Modi? Cannot say it so early. We'll have to watch him for some more time.
In other words, the need for a new Modi is the challenge the old Modi faces.
That's it. I think so. That's very well put.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Narendra Modi may well be back in office for a third term, but the numbers supporting him are dramatically different to what he expected and to what he's grown accustomed to. No longer does he have a majority, and therefore no longer can he be authoritarian and autocratic in his manner and behavior. But that is the critical question. Is he psychologically and temperamentally capable of being a consensual prime minister who depends upon allies to survive in office? That's the principal question I shall raise today with someone who spent a lifetime studying Mr. Modi's character and behavior. I'm referring to his well-known biographer, the author of Narendra Modi, The Man, the Times, Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay. Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, let me start with a basic question. As his biographer, few people know and understand Narendra Modi, the person, better than you do. Modi first predicted that the BJP would win 370 seats on its own. Then, in an interview to the Economic Times after the fifth phase of polling, he said the party had already crossed 272. In fact, he was also reported shortly thereafter to talk about a 1,000-year reign. In the end, the BJP has only got 240 seats, way short of the 272 majority mark. So my question is this: will Narendra Modi this morning be an embarrassed man, or is he thick-skinned enough to simply brush it off?
Well, Karan, first of all, thank you very much for getting me on your program. It's a big honor to be speaking to you just a day after possibly one of the most historic verdicts that the Indian people have given. My first thought is that Narendra Modi has suddenly been asked to enact a role which he's never done before in his life ever. I have written often, and especially in my book also it was mentioned, that right from his childhood, Mr. Modi wanted the spotlight to be on him always. One of his teachers in school told me that he liked to act in theatre, in the plays which were mounted as part of the annual function in the school. He wouldn't accept a role if he did not have the lead part in it. Mr. Modi, right from the time that he became first the Gujarat chief minister and then the prime minister, he has never worked with people. He has always been a domineering, towering personality. Only his word would run, only his writ would run. Suddenly, he is faced in a situation where his arms may be twisted by his allies who would want certain policies, certain decisions, certain placements to be in line with their priorities to ensure that their voter base does not get upset. For instance, Telugu Desam Party, which is from Andhra Pradesh, they have a certain amount of base among the religious minorities in the state. Would they allow Mr. Modi to pursue the kind of majoritarian exclusivist policies? And would he be able to speak the language of polarization, which Mr. Modi spoke so much in abundance through the entire campaign? So suddenly, I'm not sure that Mr. Modi is prepared for what he has to become now. It will be a big challenge. And I can say with a certain amount of certainty that he would have been a broken person yesterday and would have woken this morning with a sense of defeat. He cannot actually ever like to be defeated. That is something in him. He has to win every game. So we will have to keep a very keen eye on how he develops. Government formation is going to be a very key occasion for us to look at as to how he is adapting to the new role that he has to play.
Let's look, Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, at his personal performance in Varanasi before we broaden out to talk about the other challenges, the other problems and difficulties he faces. In 2019 in Varanasi, he had a 4.8 lakh majority. That's been reduced to just 1.52 lakhs. In fact, initially, yesterday, he was trailing. How will a man who claimed as recently as May, Ganga meri maa hai, he said, mujhe Ganga ne god le liya, how will a man who believes this of himself handle this very personal reversal in fortune?
I don't know how he will be able to actually just, rationalize the performance, which definitely is actually very close to a, not exactly a defeat, but not definitely a huge triumph like in 2014 and in 2019. In fact, it had appeared right from the beginning. I do remember speaking with one fellow journalist, who spent his childhood and his college period in Varanasi and who understood the city very well. We were discussing that can Mr. Modi be defeated? So his reply was that maybe not defeated, but he can be, really challenged. In fact, at that point, I had very contentiously argued, that it might be a good idea for Priyanka Gandhi to contest from Varanasi, essentially on the basis of this background that the opposition really required to put up a very strong, prominent candidate to pin Mr. Modi down to Varanasi. That would have reduced his effectivity as a campaigner across the country.
But
Anyway, for reasons, they did not, the Congress party did not, decide to do that. Looking from the manner in which the electoral officers behaved and struck and rejected the nomination paper of that mimic, Sham Rangila, was indicative that Mr. Modi was on a jittery surface. If there could be actually somebody, maybe Sham Rangila would not have been able to actually win, but he definitely would have attracted a lot of crowd and people would have been laughing at his performances. And the laughter of a mimic is never on what he is saying, but because the audience assumes that it is the person who is being mimicked is the one who is actually speaking. So Mr. Modi does not like to be a butt of jokes.
let me ask one more question about yesterday before I broaden the discussion. There's no doubt that by 8 in the evening yesterday, it was crystal clear that Mr. Modi had lost the BJP its majority. Secondly, there's no doubt that by 8 o'clock yesterday evening, it was crystal clear he'd taken the BJP to its worst performance in the last 10 years. And yet, he delivered a celebratory speech on television. What does that tell you about him? And what does that tell you about his state of mind?
Well, he obviously could not have come and said that we have not got a majority and that we will now run a coalition. Suddenly from being a Modi Sarkar or a Modi government, Mr. Modi started saying NDA government, NDA ki Sarkar. It's a huge come down, but in public, he is not a person who's ever going to concede defeat, that the mandate has not been given to me the way I had wanted it. After all, he had wanted 370 seats. and 400 for the NDA, more than 400 for the NDA. 400 par was the slogan. So from 370, he's down by 130, which is almost one third of the target that he wanted has been actually shaved off.
Really, this has to be embarrassing, even if he won't admit it and puts up a brave face. In his heart of hearts, as you said, he will have woken up this morning feeling an unhappy man.
Definitely. He would have woken up today feeling he would be aware of this, of the defeat, and there will be a sense of defeat. And, how he navigates this is actually going to be very important. And as I was saying, that government formation is going to be a very tricky position. There was this picture.
Let me stop you there. Let's take up what you're talking about. Let's now ask you questions about Mr. Modi's character and temperament and the extent to which that will enable him to handle the tricky challenges ahead. To begin with, there's no doubt that the NDA is in a position to form a government. It has 294 seats. But how comfortable will Narendra Modi be as Prime Minister when he's dependent on support from Chandrababu Naidu and Nitish Kumar? No longer can he be the autocratic, authoritarian Prime Minister he's got used to over the last 10 years. And already social media is talking about the demands Naidu and Nitish Kumar will make. Will they want the home ministership? Will they want a money-making ministerial portfolio like finance and defense? Will they insist that the speaker has to be from their party rather than the BJP? These are demands he's not used to handling. He's never had to face them before. So how comfortable will he be this morning when he knows these are the challenges that lie ahead?
He wouldn't be comfortable, because if you go ahead and go through his entire political career, he's always never learned to work with people and play a secondary role or being dictated by others. Even before, he had made a transition to the national political stage, he would constantly have run-in with his party colleagues in Gujarat. I remember in 91, 92, immediately after the Ekta Yatra, which he coordinated for Dr. Murli Manohar Joshi right from Kanyakumari to Srinagar, when he went back to Gujarat, he expected that he would be really lavished a lot of praise, but his party colleagues at that time wouldn't really, give him the liberty to make any decisions autocratically on his own. And, at that point, the BJP was not in power in the state. There were other parties in power in the state. But he had problems and he was sidelined. And it took a long time on his part, even after he came back on the center stage in Gujarat when Keshubhai Patel was the chief minister. Mr. Modi was once again, back to trying to control everything on his own. So he's always run into problem when he's been put in situations where he has to work with others and not being able to work with others, and instead wanting to become the most domineering person in that entire political establishment. And then again, he's actually faced setbacks. So if in a coalition, he tries to become the kind of Modi which was there in the first and in the second terms, then it is actually going to lead to a lot of problems with the allies. And given the wafer-thin majority which he has, even with his ally partners, you just require maybe just about 20 people moving from one side to the other side, and they'll be down to 271.
Let's look a little further down the road that lies ahead of Narendra Modi this morning. The key question is, can Narendra Modi, both temperamentally and psychologically, adjust to the very different circumstances he now faces as Prime Minister? Is he psychologically ill-equipped to handle a coalition government where the BJP doesn't have a majority? It has to carry its allies. He has to not just listen to them, he has to give in to them. He has to, in fact, often anticipate what they want to ensure that he has a cordial relationship. But is he temperamentally and psychologically capable? Or is he a dominant man who likes his way?
He is a person who likes his way. He likes to dominate the others. He's never had the reason to work with others and accommodate the views of anybody else, right from the time that he became the chief minister of Gujarat. He had at that point, very interestingly, he also had problems within what we call the Sangh Parivar. there was actually a major, problem which came up with the RSS unit in Gujarat, because the RSS expected that while he was the chief minister, he was also a pracharak, and that he owed it to the organization to come and spend some time with them and brief them as to what he intended to do with the government, but he was not willing to discuss anything. At that time, he was able to lobby with Nagpur and get the head of the RSS in Gujarat territory transferred to somewhere else. Was transferred to Chennai. But it is going to be difficult now, not just negotiating and taking along his allies within the NDA, but he also has to have the support of the Sangh Parivar on its side. If for a moment, just imagine if Nagpur tells its other affiliates who are there in other sections of society, be it the trade union, be it the farmer unions, that you really do not have to be too concerned about the government. You must actually do what your sector demands you to do. So suddenly you might find a lot of Sangh affiliated organizations launching movements and protests against government decisions. That is going to be a very difficult situation for Mr. Modi to handle.
It's not just that people within the Sangh will launch protests or movements against the government's decisions. Mr. Modi could also face incipient challenges, or at least incipient threats from within his party, because he's a weakened man as prime minister. He's brought the BJP to its lowest point in 10 years. He knows that. The party knows that. And those in the party who aspire to take his job know that as well. How will he temperamentally handle those sort of challenges? Because now he's going to have to start looking over his shoulder, which is something he's not used to doing.
No, he's certainly not used to doing. In the last 10 years, he's not been very kind with several very tall leaders of his party. I'm not talking about the veterans who have been sidelined by him, people like Mr. Advani and Murli Manohar Joshi. But I'm talking about even people who were within his cabinet. It is not a secret for anyone, that leaders like Nitin Gadkari and even Rajnath Singh were possibly just about tolerated by Mr. Modi, but they weren't very happy with the kind of secondary position that was given to them, not really having the kind of power and not being able to make the decisions. Because Mr. Modi in his first and the second term ran a highly centralized government where the Prime Minister's office was possibly the strongest ever that India has seen, most dominating, and the entire cabinet system of governance really crumbled under Mr. Modi.
That will have to cease, won't it?
Yes, we will have to see that how Mr. Modi is able to navigate these path. He's not used to working out of the PMO. Even in Gujarat, he had possibly a very powerful chief minister's office. CMO was where everything was decided when he was in Gujarat. I remember when I was actually working on the biography and I was speaking with him, he very proudly listed, I have made a single window clearance system as one of his achievements in Gujarat. So he virtually said that if any businessman comes to India, comes to Gujarat to invest, he doesn't have to go from window to window for clearances. All he has to do is come to my office and I ensure that everything is done by my officers.
But as you're saying,
he boasted about the centralization that happened in Gujarat, and that was the crux of the Gujarat model.
But as you're saying, that centralization which happened during his second tenure in Delhi, and as you said, the PMO during that second tenure.
No, even the first tenure was highly centralized.
But as you said, the PMO under Modi was the strongest it's perhaps ever been. That centralization, that strong PMO, that single window clearance will have to change, because this is now a coalition government, and the allies will want their share of the spoils. They will want their influence. They will want their power. They will want their own decision making. And he has to now accept and accommodate them. And if he can't, he's got major problems on his hands.
Yes, he will have to actually hold many more cabinet meetings, and not just hold them, but he will have to actually listen to the views of the ministers, from the other parties, from his allies, and they will be having a viewpoint, and he will no longer be able to dictate terms to the minister to just just endorse the decisions which have been made by the Prime Minister's office and the officers there in consultation with Mr. Modi.
Let's then, at this point, Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, look at some of the things he said during the campaign and how they could come back to haunt him. He said he is not biologically born, but sent by God to do God's work. At the Vivekanand Rock Memorial, he wrote, I feel a divine energy. These are remarks that will now be thrown at his face repeatedly, and now they'll be thrown with the barb added on that God seems to have disowned his alleged messenger and turned his back on Narendra Modi. How will Modi handle these taunts? Because these taunts are going to fly around for the next 3-4 years.
Mr. Modi has right from the beginning, shown traits of presenting himself as somebody, beyond being just a human being, There was a particular decision as Gujarat Chief Minister, which was quite, commented upon positively, that how he had ensured 24 hours electricity in Gujarat's villages by able to differentiate between an agricultural grid and a domestic grid in the villages. So I had asked him that, how did you get this idea? So he said that at times I feel that I have God's gift. 2 years later, during the 2014 election, I actually met an academician who said, that in the conversation, he said that he was the one who had actually suggested to Mr. Modi that grid separation is possible. So that's it. God's gift, actually advised by an officer with who he worked. He also said, when I saw this is something
Can I interrupt there? Can I interrupt? These sort of stories now will haunt him. They will be thrown at him to taunt him. How will he handle it? He's claimed to be God's messenger. He's claimed to be not of biological birth. He's now collapsed to the lowest point in his prime ministerial career in terms of numbers. When these taunts are thrown at his face, how will he respond? Because thrown at him, they almost certainly will be.
Yes, it will be certainly thrown, and he will no longer be the God who will be able to dictate terms to the others and to whom people are going to look up with reverence. They are going to look up to him, as a senior leader, as a prime minister should be looked at by the cabinet ministers in a democratic government, where who is the prime minister, he would be given the kind of respect which the office demands. But then the ministers also, their viewpoints, ministers as well as the organizational leaders of the constituents of the NDA, their demands, their positions will also have to be heard by Mr. Modi. It cannot now be, a duopoly which will actually run this government and the entire organizational setup.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. I just wanted to also tell that how this entire approach of his of having some kind of a divine link has been there an integral part. I was talking about I asked him at that point about the time that he went away from home and apparently wandered around various parts, went and lived in Belur Mott, the Ramakrishna Mission headquarters in Kolkata, and then went off to the Himalayas. So he told me with a very straight face, that even now I at times feel that I have not come back to the material world. Now, it so happened that just a few weeks ago, I discovered that this particular quote of his, which I frankly had forgotten because it's been 12 years since I wrote that book. This particular quote of his was picked up by no one less than Christoph Jaffrelot in his book on Modi's Gujarat. That's a lead quote in one of his chapters where he actually goes to talk about Modi and the certain fixations which are there in his mind.
Now, the second controversial statement made by Modi during the campaign was to call Muslims Ghuspetiyon, people who have more children than the rest of us. He also repeatedly said they would benefit from reservations snatched from OBCs, SCs, and STs, thus deliberately, consciously demonizing Muslims in Hindu eyes. Now, when he's dependent upon allies to survive as prime minister, allies who have a very different relationship with minorities in their states, allies who may be, in fact, keen to reach out to those minorities, is he capable of changing his attitude to Muslims? Is he capable of changing his rhetoric towards Muslims? Or is he trapped by the rhetoric of the past?
I don't think that he will ever be able to get out of this, because this has actually been his second nature. And it was not just in this particular campaign. Right from the beginning, at least from the time that he was the Gujarat chief minister and the Gujarat riots happened, that is what actually created, gave Modi the kind of, aura which, or rather, let me put it this way, that he became the electorally dominant leader of Gujarat primarily only because of the Gujarat riots. From that time onwards, it has always been a constant companion of his Islamophobic speeches have come to him very right, very uh, you know, without any thought of it, he's always resorted to it. Even in the first 2002 elections, the first elections to which he led the BJP to victory, he actually used the word about referring to the riot relief camps where the Muslims were staying as baby producing factories. Throughout the 2014 election, he kept on referring to Rahul Gandhi as Shehzada, which he repeated in the 2024 election also. The UPA government was Delhi Sultanate. So it is second nature to him, using Islamophobic phrases, which is not going to be appreciated by the NDA allies. How he does it, I don't think he'll really be able to do it. He will stumble.
So, in other words, as far as his Islamophobic rhetoric is concerned, something that you say is second nature to him, something that he says and speaks without even realizing he's doing so, that will get him into trouble with the Chandrababu Naidus, the Nitish Kumars, and in the different nature and behavior expected of him, it could become a problem.
Yes, it could become a problem because he has the tendency of not being able to control his instincts. He is a pragmatic leader. The mind may say that you have to be careful, but he would not be able to actually control it because it comes out of him, as a rhetoric very naturally.
Can I ask you this? Do you think he will accept that the deliberate communalization of the campaign not just failed, but possibly backfired in states like UP and Bengal, which have very sizable Muslim populations? These were states where he was hoping to extend and increase the number of MPs he has. And in both, he's lost MPs very sizably. So will he this morning when he wakes up accept that his communal campaign failed, if not backfired, in critical states where Muslims have a sizable section of the population?
He spent so much time, almost right from the 70s onwards. 71 is the time when he cut his teeth in the RSS. From that time onwards, 50 years, half a century, he's actually spent in this communal rhetoric, looking at the minorities as, or as not the real citizens of this country, unless they are willing to accept that they too are Hindus, which the RSS keeps on saying that everybody in this country is a Hindu. You can be a follower of Islam, but you have to accept the fact that culturally you are a Hindu. That is the entire, framework of cultural nationalism, the ideology of the RSS. So I am not very sure that whether he would be able to, realize, that he's made mistakes. Even if you actually look at some of the assembly elections since 2014, you will find that there have been many instances where communal polarization has not worked. Did it lead to him abandoning that path in future elections? No. So whenever there is an election, he tries to communally polarize the voter.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Let's move one step further. One of the key characteristics of Modi's rhetoric, particularly during the campaign that just ended, was his attack on the opposition. He called them casteist, communal, and corrupt. Within this, he was particularly personal and nasty about the Gandhi family. Do you see that continuing, or will he accept that the results that have emerged show that this sort of rhetoric, this sort of attitude to the opposition doesn't work with the Indian people? Will he have learnt a lesson, or will he continue exactly as he has been?
I don't think that he will really be very easily able to stop doing this kind of, using that kind of abusive language. It's been more than 2 decades that he's actually used such language. I was recently checking out something and I found that what we always knew, that the reference to Sonia Gandhi as a Jersey cow and Rahul Gandhi as calf was made as early as the 2002 elections. He repeated it later on, but the first time that he called Sonia Gandhi, a Jersey cow and a bachra for Rahul Gandhi. So how would in 22 years this has actually been in his mind? Would he be able to suddenly, change the language, the political rhetoric which he uses? I'm not very sure.
Let's come, Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, to his attitude to key autonomous institutions like parliament, like the judiciary, like the media. You know, and I know, that he has often ignored parliament during the last 10 years. He's held up judicial appointments whenever the names recommended are names he doesn't approve of. And he's been dismissive of the media. Do you see changes on this front now that he's a weaker prime minister who needs to adopt a more consensual approach? Or again, is that very unlikely?
The kind of structures which he's created is actually going to have problems. Like, for instance, I'll just give you an example. He set up this monthly program called Man Ki Baat, which was essentially to project himself as the face, the voice of the government. Would he stop Man Ki Baat under a coalition? Would the coalition partners not ask him that please do not continue with this program because it is no longer your government, it is everybody's government? The marginalization of the media which has happened right from his Gujarat days. Let us not forget the fact that in Gujarat there was this tradition which was started by Keshubhai Patel, where every morning journalists in Ahmedabad would gather at a place, at a government office, and be taken in a government bus to Gandhinagar, which is about 20 odd kilometers. They would do their work in the all through the day, and in the evening at a certain designated time, they would all be brought back to Ahmedabad. That was a facility which was granted to journalists. That was the first thing which was stopped by Mr. Modi after he became the chief minister in 2001. So the idea that the media is not an adversary, it is in fact, a very, necessity in a democracy, that idea does not sit well in Mr. Modi's mind. So how is he going to, and other institutions also, he had problems with the judiciary even while being the chief minister of Gujarat. And also here, the way he's undermined parliamentary procedures. There has been very little scrutiny of bills which have been tabled by the government or by the standing committees. All those practices have completely come to a stop. Mr. Modi had also inaugurated the parliament building and also laid the foundation of the new parliament building. Under the constitution, the prime minister's office has no role to play in the functioning of parliament. So this desire of his to be everywhere, to be the only face of government, the number of inaugurations he's done and multiple times, it just shows, that just is essentially what Mr. Advani had said, that he is a very good event manager. That is also going to come back and haunt him. Will he be able to be the event manager of the past? I'm not very sure.
What about Mr. Modi's attitude to criticism and dissent? Have journalists and let me finish. Have journalists and his political opponents less to fear of him in his third term? Will his alleged misuse of agencies like ED and CBI cease, or will that intolerance for dissent that inability to accept criticism continue to be the hallmark of his prime ministership, even when he's a weaker prime minister dependent upon allies running a coalition and not running a government where his party has a majority? Which of the two?
There'll be a constant struggle between Modi, between what his conscious mind tells him to do. That is, that you do not do all these things. You must give greater autonomy to investigative agencies, allow the spaces to, various structures and systems to function the way they should. But there is a subconscious in him, which actually dislikes these things. All of this does not really accept criticism from anyone, whether within his own party or by other political leaders with whom he has to interact with. He would not be very comfortable in all party meetings, which he will have to now call more regularly to discuss issues. He will have to share information with not just his allies, but also with the opposition, not be the kind of, dismissive towards the opposition the way he has been in the last 10 years. The number of times that he's mocked very important, very senior opposition leaders, the kind of language he's used, the language which he used at Renuka Chaudhary, calling her Super Nekha, all those, I think, they are basic instinct of Mr. Modi. How will he control them? I really doubt whether he'll be able.
You're giving me the impression, and I imagine the impression has gone to the audience as well, that there could be a sort of inner struggle inside Mr. Modi. He's intelligent enough to know that he needs to change his behavior, his attitude, his rhetoric, his speech. Otherwise, the coalition government he runs could be endangered and collapse, and he certainly doesn't want that to happen. On the other hand, his instincts will lead him, without even thinking, to do and behave exactly as he has. And that inner struggle will be there within him all the time.
It will be there. In fact, if you actually listen to his speech yesterday, even in that speech, which is right after, it should be, he would have been aware that it has not been a verdict that he wanted. Even then, he was talking about using the same, the same slogans which he has been using through the campaign, constantly talking about we have to take India to make it a Viksit Bharat, constantly talking about Amrit Kal. All those phrases which have actually not worked for him in the elections were still being used by him yesterday. So how is he really going to completely change what he, his speech is? How will he actually change it? What kind of a vocabulary change would he be able to do? I'm not very sure.
Finally, Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, will he complete his full third term? Or might he look for a way out by seeking to become the president when President Murmu's term ends, which is roughly 2.5 years away? Might he say, this is not for me, I will continue till the term of the president ends, and then I will find a way out by elevating myself to the presidency?
Through the campaign, this matter came up that, in fact, after Arvind Kejriwal said that next year Mr. Modi will turn 75, so this is actually Amit Shah is going to become the prime minister next year. Now, obviously, nothing like that would happen. But yes, there will be, I expect a lot of dramatic developments over the next couple of years. He will turn 75. The RSS, I know, has had the tradition of people retiring after a certain age. Next year, Mohan Bhagwat will also turn 75. In fact, the two of them are just separated by a few days, 6 days, turning 75. So if Mr. Bhagwat steps down, the pressure on Mr. Modi would also be to make way for another leader to become the prime minister. I do not know if all that would happen or not, but this is the time to actually keep a very close track of Mr. Modi and see that how he copes with the new role and try to be a new Modi. The talk of it, new India, would actually go in the background, and we will be seeing the necessity to have a new Modi. Will he be able to present a new Modi? Cannot say it so early. We'll have to watch him for some more time.
In other words, the need for a new Modi is the challenge the old Modi faces.
That's it. I think so. That's very well put.
Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, thank you very much for making time for me. And thank you very much for sharing with us your invaluable insights into the character, behavior, and psychology of Narendra Modi. Now, we all will be looking to see to what extent is Mr. Modi capable of remodeling himself so that he can be a consensual prime minister of a coalition government? And to what extent will he stumble and falter because he continues to be authoritarian, autocratic, and the old Modi in a set of circumstances where he needs to be a different person, which he's unable to become. Thank you very much indeed. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.